Evening, friends. Welcome back to Stories with Pastor Macy. Today we are starting another story out of the Best of Woof book by Danae Dobson. We have read several stories out of this book. They're kind of long, so we tend to split them up into two parts. And tonight we are starting Woof and the Midnight Prowler. And the theme is don't judge only by what you see. 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. "Wake up, Chrissy!" Mark Peterson called to his sister across the hall. "We don't want to be late to Grandma's today." Grandma Peterson had one of the best farms in Idaho. It was filled with interesting animals, fruit trees, and farm equipment. Mark and Chrissy loved to ride the tractors and help with the chores. They always had fun at Grandma's farm. After breakfast, the family piled into the station wagon and Father began backing the car down the driveway. "Wait!" Mark cried, glancing around him. "Where's Woof?" As if responding to the question, a shaggy mutt with a crooked leg sped across the front yard and bounded into the back of the vehicle, knocking over 2 suitcases. Chrissy patted the dog on the head. "Sorry, Woof. We just couldn't forget to take you." Woof licked her face. On the way to the farm, Father suggested the family read the Bible and pray. The Petersons often did that on long car trips. Their faith was very important to them. So Mrs. Peterson read the story of how David was the youngest and the smallest of all his brothers. But God still wanted him to be king. "Our Heavenly Father doesn't judge us by how we look or how things appear," Mrs. Peterson said. "What he cares about most is what is in our hearts." Father then led the family in prayer and asked God to be with them on their trip to the farm. After devotions, the children read books and played games, but it wasn't very long before they got tired of sitting in the crowded car. "I'm thirsty," Mark complained. "Me too, and I have to go to the bathroom," Chrissy added. "Now, children, be patient. I'm sure there will be a gas station up the road," Mrs. Peterson said. Even Woof seemed uncomfortable as he sat panting in the back seat of the car. Before long, the Peterson car pulled into a service station. Father put gas in the tank while the children bought soda pop and played with Woof. They hardly noticed the pickup truck that pulled up beside them. A large man got out of the truck and went inside the station. In the back of the truck were twin boys who looked like pure trouble. They probably hadn't washed with soap and water for days. Mark and Chrissy didn't pay them much attention, although they wondered why the boys kept looking at them and whispering together. Then it happened. Just as Woof was running to catch a stick Mark had thrown, one of the boys hurled a rock from the back of the truck. It hit Woof in the shoulder with a thud. He let out a yelp and rolled end over end. Mark and Chrissy gasped as they ran over to their injured dog to see how badly he was hurt. In the background, they could hear the boys laughing wildly. Chrissy marched over to her father to tell him what had happened, but before she could explain, the man got back into his truck and drove away from the gas station. "Oh no!" Chrissy cried. "What happened?" Father asked, seeing tears in his daughter's eyes. After Chrissy explained what the boys had done, Mr. Peterson became very upset. "I can't believe anyone would do something so cruel to an innocent animal." Then he walked over to Woof to check for broken bones. After finding none, he cleaned the blood off the fur and gave Woof some fresh water to drink. Jake, the gas station attendant, noticed how sad Woof looked. "That was a rotten thing to do," he said, patting the straggly head. "Them Harper boys is always chasing trouble around here. Someone needs to take a stick to their backsides." In a short while, Woof appeared to be feeling better. The family climbed into the car again and said goodbye to Jake. 3 hours later, they reached the dirt road that led them to Grandma Peterson's farm. "We're almost here, kids," Mother said. "Get your things together." Up ahead, they could see an older woman waving excitedly. "There's Grandma!" Chrissy shouted. They forgot all about the long ride as they tumbled out of the car and ran to greet her. Even with a sore shoulder, Woof was close at their heels, while Mr. and Mrs. Peterson followed at a slower pace. Some adults don't like to run very much, as we all know. "Oh, it's so good to see you," Grandma said warmly as she hugged the children. It's been a long time since we were here last," Mark said. "Hey, I don't think you've met our great dog, Woof." He bent over to give his pet a hug, while Grandma scratched her head and wrinkled her brow. "He certainly isn't a very pretty sight. Look at that crooked tail and those floppy ears." "Well, remember, Mom," Father said, "he did save your grandson's life." Grandma smiled at Mark as she remembered how Woof had kept him from being hit by the car not long ago. "Well, I don't see how a dog that ugly can be worth a whole lot, but he's always welcome," she laughed. "Come on inside. I've got dinner ready." While the family visited with Grandma, Woof began to explore the area. Since he had never been to a farm, there were many strange animals he had never seen before. Woof was fascinated by the cows, pigs, and chickens. The chickens were not so thrilled to see Woof. They cackled wildly and scurried to stay out of his way, but Woof continued to chase them around the coop, playfully nipping at their feathers. After a while, he got bored with the chickens and went on to explore the other sights and smells. In the meadow, he could see fields of wheat blowing gently in the breeze, and a tiny stream running through the center of the farm. Woof completely forgot about his sore shoulder as he chased rabbits and ran through the thick grass. This was the most fun he had had in a long time. He barely even noticed it getting dark as he explored the barns and sniffed the unusual smells that were everywhere. In the distance, he heard Mark calling his name. Maybe he had some table scraps to offer. Woof began trotting back to the farmhouse, exhausted from his adventurous afternoon. Mark met him at the door. "Woof, where have you been all this time?" Woof licked his hand happily. "Grandma said you have to sleep on the porch, but I made you a soft bed and gave you some food." Woof's ears perked up. He loved to eat more than anything in the world. Just then, Chrissy unlatched the screen door. "Mark, do you think it's safe out here for Woof?" "I think so," Mark replied. "Grandma said he'd be all right." With that, the children gave their dog a pat and hurried off to bed. Woof circled his blanket 3 times, as dogs have done for tons of years, and he then curled up in a little ball. But Woof couldn't sleep. Hours passed, and yet he lay still, listening to the crickets and an occasional hoot from an owl. Finally, drowsiness began to overtake him, and he drifted off to sleep. No sooner had Woof closed his eyes than he heard a strange noise from the chicken coop. He jumped up and cocked his ears side to side, his heart thumping rapidly. After a few moments, another noise echoed in the night, followed by frantic squawking from the chickens. Woof hurried to the coop, his eyes straining to see in the darkness. As he peered inside, a strange scent drifted into his nostrils. Suddenly, he saw something move. A mean, dog-like creature was stalking in the darkness. He had chicken feathers on his nose, and his ears stood straight up. Woof didn't know the animal in the shadows was a coyote, but he understood that it was his enemy. He also knew the chickens belonged to the farm and that the killer didn't. The coyote wheeled towards Woof and growled angrily. He crouched low, preparing to fight. And that is where we're going to end our story for the night. Come back tomorrow and we will finish up Woof and the Midnight Prowler Part 2. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I can't wait to see what happens with Woof and the coyote. See you soon.